Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual public information meeting for State Project 58342, which is the replacement of bridge number 03665 carrying Groton Long Point Road over Amtrak Railroad in Groton, Connecticut. My name is Yusuf Blashi, and I am the project engineer with the Connecticut Department of Transportation for this project. We hope everyone finds this presentation informative and that we'll be able to address any questions or concerns you may have. I also want to thank Town Manager John Burt for helping coordinate tonight's meeting. There's a project email displayed on the screen where we'd be able to answer any questions you may have during tonight's presentation. The project email is DOT project 0058-0342@ct.gov. There's also two phone numbers where you'll be able to leave any questions or concerns you may have. The first phone number is 860-594-2020. The second phone number is 860-594-2078, which is a direct phone number of Francisco Fadul, the project manager. There's more information available at the project webpage, and that website is https://portal.ct.gov/DOT Groton 58-342. Next slide, Jody. Here we have the project team on the Connecticut Department of Transportation end. And we have Bart Sweeney, the Division Chief of Bridges. We have Derek Lessard, the Principal Engineer, Consultant Bridge Design. Myself, Yusuf Blashi, the Project Engineer and Consultant Bridge Design, along with Francisco Fadul, Project Manager for the project and Consultant Bridge Design. Here we have the Consultant Liaison Engineering team, along with the Designer of Record, WSP. For the CLE team, Rich Armstrong is the program manager over at GM2. Dennis Garceau is a project manager at GM2. Tom Wiley-Burt is the project director over at WSP. And Jody Constant is the project manager over at WSP. Next slide, thank you. As part of Title VI Civil Rights, no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. A link is provided on this slide for additional civil rights information. We would greatly appreciate if you would complete the public survey after tonight's meeting. A link and a QR code are provided on this slide. Links to both the public survey and the civil rights flyer are also available on the project website mentioned on the first slide. A recording of this presentation will be posted to YouTube after the event. Closed captioning, including non-English translation options, are available on Zoom and YouTube. Next slide, please. This is Title VI Notice to the Public, which states that the Connecticut Department of Transportation operates its programs and services without regard to race, color, and national origin in accordance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Any person who believes she or he has been aggrieved by any unlawful discriminatory practice under Title VI may file a complaint with the CTDOT. Next slide, please. There are three ways you'll be able to communicate with us during and after this meeting. You can submit questions via email, dotproject0058-0342@ct.gov, by phone number 860-594-2020 or 860-594-2078. There's also a Q&A offered by Zoom, and we will be able how to use this. We'll be able to explain how to use this function in more detail on the next slide. This function will only be available during tonight's meeting. Please note that the comment period is open through May 27th, 2024. Next question. Here we discuss how to use the Zoom Q&A function. If you're on a computer, you can hover your mouse down at the bottom of the screen where a ribbon will pop up, and you will have the ability to click Q&A. Once that window pops up, it will look like what is displayed on the screen on the right-hand side. You will be able to type in a question, and one of the panelists will be able to answer the questions. Next slide. This is where I'll pass this over to our task order designer, WSP, Jody, will be able to take it from here. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Isif. So as Isif mentioned, my name is Jody Constant. I am the project manager for WSP, and we are the designers for the project. Isif has already introduced our project team, but for the remainder of the agenda, I will be presenting the project details developed thus far through preliminary design of the project, so about 30% of the way through design. That's going to include reviewing the existing conditions as well as the proposed scope. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll have an open forum for your questions and answers. So project 58342 is located in Southwest Groton, where Groton Long Point Road crosses over Amtrak Railroad. Esker Point Beach is just south of our project, and the intersection with South Elm Street is just north of our bridge. This is primarily a residential area. However, the Esker Point Beach is a very popular town destination, especially in the summers. And the state of Connecticut also owns a maintenance facility adjacent to the northeast corner of the bridge. So before we get into the details of the current conditions of the bridge, I want to quickly review some bridge terminology that's going to be used throughout the presentation. This schematic depicts the bridge supports on either end, which are the abutments. The intermediate supports are the piers. The deck is the surface that you ride on the bridge, and that's supported by steel girders below. The bearings are what support the girders on both the abutments and the piers. And then finally, the parapet is the concrete barrier that you typically see on the bridge. So the purpose of this project is to address the structural deficiencies of Bridge 3665. We have reviewed routine inspection reports over the last few years on this structure, as well as completed a site visit to confirm all of these areas of deterioration. There are currently low condition ratings for the deck, the steel girders, and the bearings. So taking a closer look at the existing conditions, you can see there's a lot of rust observed, especially on the structural steel elements, on the girder ends and the bearing locations at the piers. So also in the center picture on the bottom of this slide, it gives a really good view of the underside of the bridge deck, where you can see the rail catenary wires are held down underneath the bridge deck, and they're attached to the bridge. So any repairs at this location are going to be invasive to the rail line below. It's going to require coordination with Amtrak and track outages to perform any construction over or adjacent to the tracks. So with that in mind, and considering the high level of deterioration that's observed on the bridge, a full bridge replacement was selected to address these structural deficiencies. So this display plan shows the main limits of the project scope. The orange shading highlights the proposed bridge, the wing walls, as well as sidewalks. So a new sidewalk is going to be installed on the west side of the roadway, south of Bridge 3665. And then if you look on the right side of the screen, you can see that there's also sidewalks proposed between Fisher's View Drive and Mohegan Road. And the intent of this addition to the project is to provide sidewalk connectivity from Mohegan Drive all the way down to the parking lot for Esker Point Beach. Furthermore, as a result of CTDOT's Complete Streets Directive, which includes a focus on pedestrian and bicycle mobility, pavement markings are going to be added to Groton Long Point Road for an extended limit. So we're proposing to install buffered bike lanes, which are shown in the photo on the right there, from Esker Point Beach parking lot at the southern end of the project, and then all the way up to the entrance with Fitch High School on Groton Long Point Road, a little bit further up. So the yellow shading shows those limits on the screen. However, majority of the project work is really going to be surrounded around that bridge replacement. So we can take a closer look at the bridge site itself. The yellow shading here shows the limits of paving for the project on either side of the bridge, as well as tying into that intersection with South Elm Street. The limits of pavement replacement are really defined by a profile raise in the roadway that I'll be showing on the next slide. And the green shading here shows any areas of disturbed soil that are going to be filled or that are going to be higher than the existing condition in the final condition. And then lastly, any blue areas shown are the existing wetlands that are adjacent to the site work, but we do not intend on disturbing any of these areas. So this graphic shows that vertical profile of Groton Long Point Road and the proposed change from existing. So the existing minimum vertical clearance from the bottom of the bridge to the top of the rail is 18 feet 8 inches, and that's substandard. So in order to achieve the standard minimum vertical clearance of 22 feet 6 inches, the existing roadway is going to be raised about 4 feet at the bridge location. So that green shading shows the increase from existing and how the difference ties back into existing on either side of the bridge. And then we've also highlighted the baselines on this graphic in yellow for the intersecting roadways. And that's really to show you that we're going to tie back into existing before the intersection with Marsh Road. So there'll be no impacts to that intersection. And then we're just about back to existing at South Elm Street. That's why we have a little bit of paving down that intersection to ensure a really seamless transition back to the existing grade. So the existing bridge is 3 spans with an overall length of 136 feet. There are piers that are currently within Amtrak's right-of-way. So our proposed structure is only going to be a single span replacement with about a 113-foot long span. And this configuration removes any piers or abutments from Amtrak's property. And the abutments that we intend on using are reinforced concrete with spread footings. The proposed bridge cross section is pretty similar to the existing bridge. It's going to be composed of a reinforced concrete deck, composite with steel girders. There's still going to be a sidewalk on the west side of the bridge, and the bridge will still support the water main utility, but it's just going to be relocated in the final condition. You can see in the proposed, it's on the right side of the screen. Lastly, the bridge parapets are going to support a solid fence on either side, and that's just to protect the rail below from any debris that could fall overhead. So in regards to utility impacts, there's a number of overhead utilities that run along Groton Long Point Road. They actually run on the east side of the road, south of the bridge. They cross the bridge diagonally and then run along the west side of the road, north of the bridge. So these are both electric and communication lines that are present, and they're just going to be temporarily relocated during construction, as shown in that dashed line. For underground utilities, the only utility present is that water main I mentioned. It's owned by Norwalk Fire District, and that runs along Groton Long Point Road. So as I mentioned, we'll be permanently relocating it to the east side of the bridge, and any details for this relocation are going to be developed further in final design. There are 2 permits anticipated for the project. The first is the Coastal Area Management Review, and the second is the Flood Management General Permit. And that's because the project is located within FEMA Zone AE. Currently, there are no right-of-way impacts anticipated for the project on private properties. This is going to be confirmed once we receive and compile the survey along the full limits of the sidewalk reconstruction limits. We do know, however, we're going to have extensive coordination with Amtrak, the state of Connecticut, and the town of Groton for any construction activities that are on or adjacent to their properties, as well as the rail tracks. So for the construction of the bridge, it will be built in 2 stages. These cross sections show each stage from existing to stage 1, where the right side of the bridge is going to be removed and replaced, while traffic travels on the west side of the bridge. In stage 2, traffic is going to flip onto the proposed structure while the west side is removed and replaced. We are proposing one-way alternating traffic, which is going to be controlled by temporary signals in order to maintain traffic on Groton Long Point Road throughout the duration of construction. So these next few slides are going to show the traffic impacts that can be anticipated during each stage. Before the lane reduction occurs, we're going to have a pre-stage 1 activities, which is going to include preparation of that west side of the roadway for the shifted traffic. We're also going to be installing a temporary pedestrian bridge to the west side of the existing structure to maintain pedestrian traffic throughout construction. And we're going to be removing the existing sidewalk on the existing bridge that's going to help make some room for that temporary traffic. So once the site is properly prepared, the single lane of traffic is going to be shifted to the west side of the roadway so that the east side of the structure can be removed and replaced. Then in stage 2, the single lane of traffic is going to be shifted onto the newly constructed east half of the bridge so the west side can be removed and replaced. So in both stage 1 and 2, the temporary traffic signals are going to be installed at the Marsh Road and South Elm Street intersections to control one-way traffic over the bridge. All of that work is going to be staged in accordance with the rail traffic below and the ability to de-energize those catenary wires and coordinate track outages with Amtrak. So during construction, the contractor will need an area to store vehicles, materials near the site. We are considering the use of the corner of the Esker Point Beach parking lot. This is a very convenient location that's going to have limited environmental impact since it's already a paved area, and that'll help keep costs down for the project. But the use of this area is going to be coordinated with the town as we move into final design. We did want to note that there is an adjacent bridge replacement project. This is project 58344, which is the replacement of bridge number 4675. You may be aware of this project. There's already been some public outreach regarding this project over the past few years. At this time, 58344 is in conceptual design. A new public info meeting can be inspected coming this November of 2024, where more information will come out regarding that project. But we have already begun coordinating with their project team to ensure that these projects are going to be completed without any conflicts with one another. So the anticipated funding for the project is split between federal, state, and municipal funds. 80% of the funds will be federal, and the remaining 20% is going to be covered by state and municipal funds. The exact breakdown between state and municipal funding is still being determined at this time. That'll be completed as we go into final design, but the total cost estimate for the project is $13.6 million, and that is our preliminary estimate at this point. So, as I mentioned, all the information presented here today was developed through preliminary design, so we're about 30% through design for the project. We're going to continue to develop the design and finalize that over the next 2 years and put the project out to bid in the summer of 2026. Then the contractor will be awarded and active construction can be anticipated in the fall of 2026. The duration of construction is estimated to be 2 seasons, so the activities would conclude in the fall of 2028. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention. And I'm going to hand things over to Dennis, who's just going to review some of the Q&A protocol again.
Thank you, Jody. Again, my name is Dennis Garceau. I work with GM2 Associates. We are the consultant liaison on this particular project, 0058-0342. And I will help facilitate the question and answer session as questions are added to the Q&A feature. as shown on the right. Again, you can hover over that Q&A item that's on the bottom menu and click on that, and that should open up a dialog box, and then you can type your question in there, and we'll go through each question one by one, and the panelists will help answer them appropriately. Just to remind everyone, again, the comment period for this project is open 2 weeks after this meeting through May 27, 2024. Also, you can send questions via email at dotproject0058-0342@ct.gov, by phone via voicemail at 860-594-2020, or 860-594-2078, which is Francisco Fadul's contact information. Also, again, as mentioned, you can communicate questions through the Zoom Q&A function, which is only active during this meeting. And if you need additional information about the project, there is a project webpage, which is http portal.ct.gov DOT Groton 58-342. Also, please note that all these links and appropriate links from the other presentation material has been conveniently cut and pasted into the webinar chat function. So at this point, we can open it up to questions that you may have. It looks like there is a question. Please repeat the description of proposed bike lanes.
Absolutely. So I'm going to pull that graphic back up so we can look at it together. So the intent of the buffered bike lanes is really just pavement marking that's going to be installed along Groton Long Point Road. So you can see the pavement markings on the photo of the right there. So the proposed installation is from that Esker Point Beach parking lot, the southern end, and then all the way up to Fitch High School at the northern end. So quite a ways up Groton Long Point Road. And really there won't be any pavement disturbed along those full limits. It'll really be the pavement markings that are installed for those limits.
There's also another question that came up. Amtrak has just begun the New Haven to Providence corridor study to determine corridor needs for increasing regional rail capacity and improving the state of good repair. What coordination has occurred? What coordination is anticipated? Will there be space for an additional track? Tell us about how climate change is addressed in this project as the location is within the floodplain. Do you want to, so Jody is going to answer that question or start?
Sure. Yeah, I can start, and then maybe Dennis, you can talk a little bit about coordination. But regarding the space for an additional track, the benefit of having our full replacement here and moving all of the substructures of the bridge outside of Amtrak's right of way, it would give them more flexibility to add another track if needed. And then additionally, because we're now going to be meeting the standard minimum vertical clearance, that kind of eliminates obstructions down the road for them that meets their new standard, and that is sought after at all new bridge replacements. So I think this is going to be an opportunity for them if needed, but at this time we don't know of any plans for an additional track right now.
And as Jody mentioned, I can add a little bit extra to that. We are coordinating basically the work effort and sharing basically the design plans through each phase, from preliminary design all the way through final design and contract bid documents with Amtrak to get any feedback or input that they have on the details to make sure that we're accommodating any appropriate requirements for Amtrak and taking that into consideration. And I'll start answering also the climate change question. We are aware that there is basically a floodplain within the vicinity of the project. and that the base flood elevation is about elevation 12. So that does inundate some of the tracks, basically the track, a small limit of the tracks under the Bridge 3665 crossing. So obviously that is going to be taken into consideration, and we'll be coordinating with Connecticut DOT on the permit, with the permit process as far as what is required to address any, climate change issues that may occur. And if anyone else wants to add to that.
It was well said, Dennis.
Is there any other questions at this time? There's another question that came in. Is there any way of completing this project in a segmented fashion to have less traffic restriction occurring in the slower fall and winter seasons versus potentially the busiest and most traveled summer and spring seasons as it relates to all the abutting businesses?
Sure, I can start the response to that one. So we're highly aware of the increased traffic in the summer here. I think we've been told that the average daily traffic nearly doubles in the summertime at this location. So number one, that was a main reason why we wanted to make sure we kept continuous traffic on Groton Long Point Road throughout the duration of construction. But given the increase in the summer, right now, we don't have any contract requirements that are going to limit activities during the summer, but that's something that we can evaluate as we do step into final design, take a closer look at the schedule to try to avoid major construction activities in the summer, if possible, to help alleviate any of that traffic. As I did mention, though, a lot of the coordination does have to go hand in hand with Amtrak and the availability to get those track outages below the bridge as well. So that all of the outages will be coordinated kind of with the town, but as well as with Amtrak too. But it's a very fair comment, and it's definitely being considered as we walk through final design.
There's also a couple other questions that came in. Did you consider narrowing South Elm Street approach to Groton Long Point to eliminate the traffic island and reduce the crossing width? I can start answering that question. At this point, and again, as Jody had mentioned, this is during the preliminary design phase. That's something that obviously we can investigate a little further. If it makes sense to remove that island, we could build that, further into the final design for the project. Something we can investigate. I don't know if you need to add anything to that, Jody.
No, I exactly as you said, we'll definitely take it as a comment, and we can discuss that with CTDOT and see if that can be incorporated.
There's also another question. Will there be any limitations to the bypass through Noank? I guess I can answer that. We are not planning on, detouring any of the traffic through Noank. I don't know if that is the question. You may want to clarify exactly what you're asking. And I don't know if there's. I'm not really sure what you mean by bypass. I guess please clarify that. If you could clarify that, we're going to move on to some other questions. It looks like we have another question. We are the Fisherman's Restaurant and bring in 70% of our annual receipts from May through September. I guess, again, similar to the other question, that obviously most of the construction activity, it's more conducive to do the work in the summer months, which obviously is being done at the same time as when you have your peak business. So obviously we'll be taking that into consideration. And as Jody had mentioned, another reason for keeping basically traffic moving with the alternating one way and not closing the bridge. So they'll still be able to maintain traffic to your business, to and from your business. Another question that came in, the speed limit on 215 is 40 miles per hour before the bridge, and vehicles are usually moving much faster because they approach it on a decline. Even though the limit drops to 25, this leads directly to a steeper decline on a blind curve towards Esker Point crosswalk. This decline will now be steeper given that the bridge will be 4 feet higher. Are there any plans to remedy the speed issue we currently have now that the decline will be even greater? It's like Jody put her hand up for that one.
Yeah. So part of the CTDOT Complete Streets Initiative is the traffic calming that we try to introduce into these more local roads. So the installation of the buffered bike lanes is part of that, does help to calm traffic speeds on roads where they're installed, because it narrows really the line of vision of drivers, and rather than seeing an open wide shoulder, it appears that there's more of an obstacle there. So it does help reduce traffic speeds. So that's part of that CTDOT Complete Streets Initiative that we are implementing on the project. There's also a few more kind of smaller details in there, but also the sidewalks, adding the sidewalks, really adding more visual disturbances into the driver's eyes is what helps reduce those speeds. So that isn't being implemented into the project.
I can add to that too as well, Jody. If you want to share the cross section with the staging plans, or actually the slide that shows the proposed versus existing. There's towards the beginning.
Profile?
The cross section.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right here. Perfect. Again, mentioning what Jody was saying about the addition of the bike lanes and the Complete Street Initiative. Through that, as you can see, the existing cross section has pretty much 40 feet curb to curb currently, which accommodates two 12-foot lanes and two 8-foot shoulders. With the proposed bridge and accommodating the buffered bike lanes, we're actually going to reduce the lanes to 11 feet each. And as you can see, the shoulders will be reduced as well. So that is, by reducing the lanes, that should help with some of the speed issues that you're experiencing. Is there any other questions anyone has? They have a question. It says, will you be speaking with the town concerning the outright congestion mess that could occur if the summer Thursday night concert series is allowed during the 2 summer seasons that construction impact? I can start answering that question. We have met with the town several times over the last few months, and are aware that there will be typically summer Thursday night concerts that we will need to be accommodating and make sure that we're able to keep traffic flowing during those periods, especially on Thursday nights. Typically, we can also, restrict the time that the contractor's doing the work on those days, possibly. Obviously, they don't typically work beyond a normal 5 p.m. typically on nights. And if anyone needs to add anything to that I missed.
I guess I'll just, I think you started to mention it, Dennis, just to clarify, we have the ability to put those restrictions in the contract documents for the contractor. So I know the town has already notified us to these Thursday night concerts, and that's a time frame that we will likely restrict them from having any short stoppages or anything like that, as Dennis mentioned.
Is there any other questions at this time? Again, just remind everyone that there is an opportunity to ask, more questions following this meeting. We'll have comment period will be open through May 27th, 2024. And can be, questions can be sent in during that time period at the DOT email, DOT project 0058-0342 @ct.gov, by phone 860-594-2020 or 860-594-2078. Via voicemail, please make sure to mention the project number, which is again 0058-0342. And further information can be found on the project webpage, as mentioned before, portal.ct.gov/DOT Groton 58-34. Okay, looks like we had a couple more questions that came in. Your diagram indicates a 4% slope in the bike lane. Is that able to be lessened? Answer that, Jody? Okay.
Yeah, I can start the response there. So the 4% is it's a cross slope, so it's not a longitudinal slope on the road. But the reason that we do have that is to help the gutter flow on the roadway. So to help make sure that the water in any rain events or any like traveling water along the roadway really collects in the gutter itself. So it is possible to evaluate that to be lesser. Right now we are showing the standard for the design speed on the roadway, but we can look into that and see. But that is it's a standard cross slope, so it wouldn't feel if you were riding your bike along it that you were tilted in any way. That's common on roadways with this design speed.
And there's also another question that came in. Is there any way to speed up and condense the project duration? Oh, go ahead, Francisco. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just wanted to add to the last question here concerning the cross slope 4%. It's a fine balance between the gutter flow that we're trying to allow on the stormwater, and also the triangular spread of the water towards the drivable lane. And so also keeping in mind there will be bikers right in there, so I presume that that's the reason to ask for the 2% slope or something like something smaller than the 4% currently proposed. But it's a fine balance, and if we are able to accommodate the lesser cross slope and still keep the water spread pretty tight to the curb, then that would be possible here. Jody, did you say that the 4% is the minimum standard right now?
I don't know if it's the minimum, and actually, Steve, I'm not sure if you know off the top of your head, but I know it was within the range for this design speed.
Hang on, Jody. I'm going to pull that information up right now from the preliminary report. Because that's treated, we're looking at that. That's the standard cross slope for the shoulder area. And so because that bike lane is acting like the shoulder, so that's the typical cross slope that we would be looking at in that area, is the 4%. The other thing that I'd like to mention is because the section of the roadway is on a curve, the roadway is banked. It's called super elevation. So when you're on a curve, there's a portion of the roadway, in order for the cars to travel safely around the curve, it gets banked. It gets super elevated in one direction, and that's actually a 4% cross slope. So there is, and by our roadway standards, we would have to carry that cross slope all the way across the roadway, through the shoulders in that area, including the bike lane. So there would be a good section of the roadway that is super elevated that would require this 4% in that area. Hopefully that helps clarify it a little bit.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Looks like there is, so there was a question, another question that came in. Is there any way to speed up and condense the project duration? If you want to start that off, Jody, thank you.
Sure. So there are ways that we can implement accelerated bridge construction on projects. The handoff that we have with that is anything that's done faster, it also becomes more expensive. So in order to try to keep the project costs down, that's why we're showing the one-way alternating traffic. It was our best balance to try to keep traffic moving throughout this corridor, but as well as try to get the project done as quickly as possible. So there are ways it can be done, but again, it's gonna drive up the cost for the project.
Another thing to add on that, as you mentioned, the other complexity with this, with the bridge being crossing the Amtrak. So Amtrak, there's going to be, all the coordination of the work has to be coordinated with track outages and so forth with Amtrak. So that typically, and unfortunately, slows sort of the progress of the construction. So a lot of times you're limited, the contractor is going to be limited to these small windows of opportunity to be working over and adjacent to the track. So it's something we can obviously look into, but it is more complex to try to condense it or try to, with the fact that there's going to be ongoing coordination with Amtrak to do the work, the proposed work.
That's a good clarification, Dennis.
Looks like another question. Will this session be available as a recorded video? As mentioned earlier on in the presentation, basically, this is also going to be recorded on YouTube. So you'll be able to access the YouTube video essentially with www.youtube.com. And I also copied in the link for the YouTube in the chat. If you want to look there, be able to cut and paste that after the meeting. So the answer to the question is yes, this will be recorded and there'll be access to that to the public. There's also another question. Children with training wheels will have issues with a 4% slope.
So I'll just kind of comment on that a little bit further. So the 4% slope, that is over the 5-foot bike lane width. That's only 3 inches. So it is a minor cross slope in terms of when you see it out in the in reality. So I don't think it's really challenging for anyone to travel on it. And it's also everything that obviously we designed that comes out new. It all meets ADA requirements for any cross slopes or longitudinal slopes that are put out into the field. So we don't see any challenges in terms of bike lane use with that cross slope. And again, it is the standard.
Thank you, Jody. Is there any other questions at this time? Again, there will also be, as mentioned before, there'll be an opportunity within 2 weeks, 2-week period following this meeting to answer questions that you may not have thought of during the meeting, but that you can always, send to the department via the email, the phone numbers, and so forth. And all these links and information has been copied and provided within the chat feature of Zoom. We do have another question that came in. I frequently travel 215 and have never seen many passengers in the trains going by. Train service is not heavily utilized in this part of the state. What mandates this expenditure? Francisco, you want to add to that?
Yes, just wanted to jump in. It's still a public facility that exists, and there are users of it, and we have to be mindful of it. This bridge obviously carries
several transportation modes and crosses the train travel mode. And we have to be mindful of the existence of it. There's also state statutes that mandate, work that has to be done in bridges over train tracks, I mean. That's way beyond this project team's scope to try and take away the travel mode below this bridge. That conversation, that would be a national conversation with national entities and federal highways. That wouldn't be here for this team to determine. But we do know that this is a facility that's very important to Amtrak, regardless. And we're going to treat it as a very important stakeholder here.
Any other questions? Oh, there we go. Just a comment. Said we appreciate your time and clarifications that you all laid out tonight. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's good positive feedback. As we go through all these questions, we're hoping we're answering them to the best of our abilities. So I appreciate that. Sure the rest of the team does as well. Any other questions? It looks like there are possibly two questions that are still open. And I apologize if we've missed those. And I also got another positive feedback. Individual is super excited for the bike lanes. Appreciate that. Any other questions at this time? So leave it open for a few more minutes. Again, comment period will be open through May 27th, 2024. Additional questions outside this VPIM or virtual public information meeting can be sent to the department via email at dotproject0058-0342@ct.gov. Also by voicemail, either 860-594-2020 or 860-594-2078. Just to mention in your voicemail, make sure you reference the DOT project number 0058-0342 in your message. And if there's any other questions, give you a couple more minutes to see if anything comes in. So one more minute. No other questions come in, we'll be concluding the meeting. And again, this is also basically recorded and can be basically the recording can be accessed on YouTube, as mentioned before, and as the link has been copied and pasted into the chat feature of this meeting as well. All right, I think that concludes our meeting. I appreciate everybody's time and efforts. And again, if you have any questions, please utilize the emails and phone numbers as mentioned before.